Number 6. Germans and the crazy polar bear fad. Polar bears became all the rage in Germany, starting in the early 1920s, when the Berlin Zoo acquired a pair of polar bear cubs. The cute new additions caught on with the public and proved so wildly popular that the result was a mini-boom in furries and polar bear costumes. The German polar bear fad was more than a mere flash in the pan. Like David Hasselhoff, it went on for decades. Year after year, cheerful Germans of all walks of life and ages routinely snapped photos of themselves posing with polar bear skins or folk in polar bear costumes as the country underwent radical changes. The Weimar Republic weakened and collapsed, the Nazis seized power, the Third Reich kicked off its horrors, World War II was fought and lost, Germany was occupied, and throughout it all, Germans kept up the polar bear fad. It was only in the late 1940s that the fad finally disappeared. Number 5. Delhi's little snake problem. British India's rulers were worried when Delhi became infested with venomous cobras, so they offered a bounty for the dead snakes, payable upon delivery of their skin to designated officials. Before long, locals were thronging to the drop-off points, whose storerooms were soon bulging with skins. However, the city's cobra population remained unchanged, no matter how many skins were delivered to the authorities. Officials eventually figured out why many locals had turned to farming the snakes. Since the bounty on the snakeskin was greater than the cost of raising a one, the British had unintentionally created a new cash crop. So, as it wasn't working, the authorities cancelled the plan and stopped paying out bounties. But that made things worse. Without the bounties, the skins and captive cobras became worthless. So, Delhi snake farmers did the economically sensible thing and released them into the city. The infestation grew exponentially and Delhi wound up with many times more cobras than it had possessed before the authorities launched their silly idea. That's hysterical. Number 4. Tootsie Roll saved the day. During the Korean War, American troops in the Chosin Reservoir had it bad. They were outnumbered 8-1, cut off, supplies were running low, temperatures plummeted to -25 degrees, and food was almost impossible to warm up. They were also running low on mortar shells. In ordering mortar shell resupplies, they used a code name established for the munitions, Tootsie Rolls. Somebody took that literally, however, and airdropped the beleaguered troops crates of the candy, instead. It turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Tootsie Rolls were among the few food items that were edible when frozen, and the sugar boost gave the weary fighters a needed jolt. Additionally, the troops soon found innovative uses for the candy. Chewed-up Tootsie Rolls became like putty in the mouth but froze solid when exposed in the frigid conditions of the Chosin Reservoir. So, using Tootsie Rolls as improvised epoxy, the troops patched up bullet holes in equipment and repaired broken tools. Then, on a sugar high and with their equipment fixed, the American forces broke out of the Chosin Reservoir and fought their way to safety. Have you ever heard such a sweet thing? Number 3. If you push that hard, something is going to pop. Catherine the Great was Empress of Russia from 1762 until her death. A German-born princess, she ascended the throne after she had her husband, Tsar Peter III, assassinated. That's a bit rude, don't you think? Anyway, she continued the westernization work begun by Peter, and by the end of her reign, Russia had fully joined European political and cultural life. Sadly, for her, Catherine's regal reign was not to be matched by a regal demise. Well known for her insatiable proclivities, rumors circulated that she had died after sustaining injuries from having sex with a horse. The truth was not as gross but embarrassing all the same. Catherine had been feeling constipated, and during a heroic effort to force relief on the toilet, she overstrained herself and suffered a fatal stroke. When her loud grunting ceased, her maids waiting outside assumed that Her Majesty had finally found relief. They started getting nervous, however, as the minutes dragged on without Catherine emerging or summoning them. Eventually they delicately inquired if all was well. Hearing no answer, they looked and found the Empress dead on the toilet. What a way to go, that just stinks. Number 2. Blind leading the blindly loyal. John, the King of Bohemia, also known as John the Blind after losing his eyesight 10 years before his death, was one of the most successful warrior kings of his era, having campaigned and fought across Europe from the Mediterranean to the Baltic. When King Philip VI of France asked for his help against England, John, despite his blindness, came to the French king's aid. When the armies met at the Battle of Crécy, August 26, 1346, John was in command of the French vanguard and a significant contingent of the French army. Despite his blindness, John ordered his retinue to tie their horses to his and ride into battle so he could deliver at least one stroke of his sword against the English, and thus satisfy his honor. Tied to their horses, the blind king rode into the fight. It did not go well, however. John the Blind misjudged how far he had gone and plunged too deep into the English ranks. He ended up getting cut off and enveloped by the enemy, and in the ensuing melee, the blind king and his poor retinue were killed. Come on, John, wake up. Number 1. The Dirty Poet. The 6th Baron Byron was one of Britain's greatest poets, famous for his brilliant use of the English language. For those of you who do not know Lord Byron, he wrote amazing poems like Don Juan, which never even finished before his untimely death from fever, thought to have been malaria, in 1824. He was an extremely colorful character, being famous, or infamous, for his flamboyance, deviant practices, the notoriety of his romantic liaisons with members of both sexes, and the practice of incest. Byron's most controversial relationship was with his own sister, Augusta Lee. Byron had seen little of her during childhood but made up for it greatly by forming an intimate relationship with her in adulthood. He would eventually father a child with her in 1914. As a brooding sentimental, Byron liked to keep reminders of his various lovers, of which there were many. Back then, the norm was a lock of hair from one's object of affection, perhaps tied with a ribbon. There were no cameras for fun selfies. But being as he was, an eccentric aristocrat, an all-around pervert, a simple lock of hair would not do. Instead, he liked to snip clumps of pubic hair from his lover's crotches, and kept them, catalogued, and labeled, in envelopes at his publishing house. Wow, what a guy! If you like this video, please drop a like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.